August 1999. In a quiet government office in Canada, far from headlines and history books, an intelligence analyst sits at his desk reviewing reports most people will never see. Satellite briefings, intercept summaries, aviation security assessments, fragments of information from across the world. Individually, they don't look like much. Together, they form a pattern. And that pattern is terrifying because it suggests that the next major terrorist attack won't involve bombs or guns or hostage demands. It will involve airplanes, commercial airplanes, full of passengers, used as weapons. The analyst's name was Michael Jelinek. He worked for CSIS, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, Canada's primary civilian intelligence agency. The organization responsible for identifying threats before they happen. His job wasn't glamorous. No field missions, no car chases, no cinematic spy drama, just analysis, reading, connecting dots, and writing reports that would determine whether governments act or do nothing. In the summer of 1999, Jelinek was assigned to review emerging threats to North American Aviation. At the time, hijackings were not new. They had been happening for decades. But almost always, the goal was negotiation. Money, political demands, prisoner exchanges. The plane was leverage, not the weapon itself. But something about the new intelligence didn't fit that pattern. Reports from multiple countries described extremist operatives enrolling in civilian flight schools, not military programs. Not cargo aviation, not private pilot training for recreational flying, commercial aviation training, large aircraft systems, cockpit procedures, navigation at high altitude. And here was the strangest part. Many of these students showed little interest in takeoffs or landings, the most difficult phases of flight. Instead, they focused on steering, control, maintaining direction, once the aircraft was already in the air. To most instructors, it seemed odd, but not alarming. Some students struggle with certain skills. Some want simulator time. Some just want basic familiarity. But intelligence analysts don't evaluate behavior in isolation. They look for patterns. And Jelinek saw one. A consistent, multinational pattern of individuals linked to extremist networks seeking knowledge that would allow them to control a commercial aircraft, but not necessarily operate one safely. That distinction changed everything, because it suggested a different objective. Not transportation, destruction. Jelinek began compiling the data. Case files, immigration records, aviation training logs, intelligence summaries from allied agencies. He built a scenario piece by piece. If terrorists could seize control of a fully fueled commercial jet in midair, if they didn't need to land it, if they were willing to die, then the aircraft itself would become a guided missile. And no airport security system in the world was designed to stop that. In August 1999, he finalized his assessment. The report outlined a chilling possibility: coordinated hijackings of multiple commercial airliners, suicide operatives in control of the cockpit, aircraft deliberately flown into high-value targets in major urban centers, government buildings, financial centers, symbolic landmarks, mass casualties, maximum psychological impact. It wasn't science fiction. It was operationally plausible. Jelinek submitted the report through official channels. Inside intelligence agencies, reports don't go straight to prime ministers or presidents. They move through layers: supervisors, review boards, distribution lists, partner agencies. The document circulated within Canadian intelligence. It reached officials responsible for transportation security. Coordinated hijackings of multiple commercial airliners, suicide operatives in control of the cockpit, aircraft deliberately flown into high-value targets in major urban centers, government buildings, financial centers, symbolic landmarks, Mass casualties. Maximum psychological impact. It wasn't science fiction. It was operationally plausible. Jelinek submitted the report through official channels. Inside intelligence agencies, reports don't go straight to prime ministers or presidents. They move through layers, supervisors, review boards, distribution lists, partner agencies. The document circulated within Canadian intelligence. It reached officials responsible for transportation security. Portions were shared with allied counterparts in the United States. And then, it disappeared into the system. No emergency meetings. No sweeping aviación reforms. No urgent policy shifts. Why? Because the scenario seemed extreme, historically unprecedented, and based on assumptions that many decision-makers found difficult to accept. At the time, hijackers wanted to live. They wanted publicity, negotiation, escape routes. The idea that terrorists would deliberately kill themselves along with hundreds of civilians, repeatedly in coordinated attacks, was still viewed as outside the norm. Some officials reportedly considered the scenario too speculative, too catastrophic to be realistic. A worst-case analysis, not a probable threat. And intelligence agencies produce many worst-case analyses every year. Most never happen. So the report joined thousands of others in archives and databases, technically available, but no longer urgent. Meanwhile, the world moved on. But the pattern didn't stop. Throughout 2000 and early 2001, warning signs accumulated across multiple countries. Individuals with suspected extremist ties continued enrolling in flight training programs. Some paid in cash. Some showed little interest in certification. Some abruptly disappeared after gaining basic cockpit familiarity. Different agencies noticed different pieces. But intelligence sharing between organizations, especially across borders, was imperfect. Information was siloed, fragmented, easy to miss unless someone connected everything together. In July 2001, an FBI field office in Phoenix sent a memo to headquarters expressing concern about Middle Eastern men attending U.S. flight schools. The agent recommended a nationwide review of aviation training programs. The memo did not trigger sweeping action. Weeks later, another alarming case emerged. A suspicious student detained after raising concerns at a flight school. Foreign intelligence services also issued warnings about extremist operatives interested in aviation. Each report added another fragment to the puzzle. But no single fragment looked definitive. And without a clear picture, large-scale action was hard to justify. Then came the morning of September 11th, 2001. 19 hijackers boarded 4 commercial flights departing from the northeastern United States. They carried small weapons, simple tools that could bypass existing security measures at the time. Shortly after takeoff, they seized control of the aircraft. Passengers and crew were overpowered. Cockpits were breached. Pilots were incapacitated. And the planes did not turn toward foreign destinations or negotiation points. They turned toward targets. At 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 struck the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Millions watched in confusion, assuming it was a tragic accident. 17 minutes later, United Airlines Flight 175 hit the South Tower. The reality became undeniable. America was under attack. At 9:37 a.m., another hijacked aircraft slammed into the Pentagon, the headquarters of the U.S. military. A fourth plane, United Airlines Flight 93, never reached its intended target. Passengers, aware of what had already happened, fought back. The aircraft crashed into a field in Pennsylvania. By the end of the morning, nearly 3,000 people were dead. The world had changed in less than 2 hours. In the aftermath, intelligence agencies around the globe began reviewing everything. Every warning, every report, every missed signal. Inside Canada, analysts revisited previous assessments of aviation terrorism. Among them was Jelinek's report from August 1999. Reading it after the attacks was chilling. The core concept, hijacked airliners used as suicide weapons against major targets, had become reality. Not hypothetical, not speculative, real. The similarities were impossible to ignore. An internal question emerged. If the threat had been considered earlier, could anything have been done? The answer was not simple. Aviation security at the time was designed around a different model of hijacking. Negotiation-based incidents. Screening focused on preventing firearms and large explosives. Cockpit doors were not heavily reinforced. Procedures assumed that compliance might preserve lives. None of those assumptions applied to suicide attacks. To prevent what happened on September 11th, multiple changes would likely have been necessary beforehand. Stronger cockpit barriers, more aggressive passenger screening, real-time intelligence coordination across agencies, protocols assuming hijackers intended to crash the aircraft. But implementing all of that in advance, without a confirmed attack, would have required political will, funding, and a belief that such an extreme scenario was imminent. And that belief did not exist. After September 11th, it did. Almost overnight, aviation security transformed worldwide. Reinforced cockpit doors became standard. Passenger screening intensified dramatically. Air marshals were deployed on flights. Intelligence agencies restructured to share information more effectively. Policies shifted from reactive to preventive. But these changes came after the tragedy, not before. For analysts like Jelinek, the emotional toll was profound. Their job is to imagine disasters before they occur. To warn decision-makers about possibilities most people don't want to contemplate. And when those possibilities become reality, the question lingers. Was it preventable? Even today, experts debate that question. Some argue that no single report could have stopped the attacks. Intelligence warnings are only effective if they lead to coordinated action, and the system at the time was not built for that level of integration. Others believe that earlier recognition of the threat might have triggered security changes that could have disrupted the plot. What is clear is this: the danger was not invisible. It existed in fragments, scattered across agencies and countries. The challenge was not absence of information. It was failure to synthesize it in time. And that problem has repeated throughout history. Before major attacks, disasters, or crises, warnings often exist, buried in reports, dismissed as unlikely, or lost in bureaucratic processes. Afterward, they appear obvious in hindsight. Michael Jelinek eventually retired from intelligence work. Like many analysts, he remained largely unknown to the public. No headlines, no medals, just a career spent studying threats most people never think about. But his experience reflects a broader reality of intelligence work. Predicting the future is only half the battle. Convincing others to act on that prediction is the harder part, because governments must balance probability, cost, public perception, and competing priorities. Act too aggressively, and you risk overreaction. Act too cautiously, and you risk catastrophe. There is no perfect formula. Only judgment, and sometimes judgment fails. So why does this story matter today? Because the pattern hasn't disappeared. Warnings continue to precede crises, from terrorist attacks to financial collapses to pandemics. Analysts write reports. Some are taken seriously, others are not. And only after events unfold do we know which ones mattered most. The tragedy of September 11th was not just the scale of destruction. It was the realization that the world had entered an era where civilian infrastructure itself could be weaponized in ways previously considered unthinkable. Airplanes, buildings, transportation systems, Everyday tools turned into instruments of mass violence. And that realization reshaped global security policy for decades. Today, millions of airline passengers pass through security checkpoints that exist largely because of what happened that morning. Procedures that now feel routine were once unimaginable. Shoes removed, liquids restricted, cockpits sealed, surveillance expanded, all consequences of a threat that had been underestimated. In intelligence communities, pre-9/11 warnings are studied as case examples of systemic failure. Not because one report predicted everything, but because multiple signals failed to converge into action. The lesson is uncomfortable. Disasters are often preceded by information that doesn't seem urgent until it is. And when the cost of being wrong is high, institutions tend to default to caution. Unfortunately, caution can also mean inaction. Nearly 3,000 lives were lost on September 11th. Families shattered, cities scarred, wars launched, history redirected. And behind the visible events lies a quieter story, one of analysts, reports, and warnings that struggled to break through layers of skepticism and bureaucracy. A reminder that the most dangerous threats are not always the ones we fail to detect, but the ones we detect and dismiss. If you want more untold stories from Canada, the hidden decisions, overlooked moments, and little-known figures who shaped global events, subscribe to Canada-Untold. Next week, we're going to World War I, where Canadian soldiers earned a reputation so fierce that German troops gave them a nickname, one that revealed just how feared they truly were. See you then.